Hello, my name is Ethan Hosford and I'm currently a second-year student here at The Ohio State University. I have taken a 2367 English course in which the theme for the course was disability studies. The course allowed me to do a final project in which I'm creating a documentary that encompasses 3 interviews of individuals from all different backgrounds in order to give a good perspective on the Ohio State University's connection to disability studies, as well as programs and buildings that the university offers in order to benefit those with a disability. The 3 people I interviewed for this project is Natalie Braun, who is a minor in disability studies, Dr. Margaret Price, who is the head of the disability studies program here at the Ohio State University, as well as Daniel, who has a disability and who uses disability services. So it's going to be a documentary that encompasses very different backgrounds, and I hope that these interviews will inspire an audience to pay more attention to their surroundings in relation to disability.
Hi, my name is Daniel Leonard. I'm a student here at The Ohio State University, a junior, and I am registered with the Office of Disability Services.
Awesome. And Daniel, what's your major?
I am a psychology and political science major.
Awesome, thank you. So why did you choose the Ohio State University?
I have parents that work here, so it was kind of a decision that was kind of made that way.
Good. Since you have been a member of this university, have you noticed any parts of the university that may discriminate against those with a disability?
Not really. I think disability services is set up in a way that they make sure it's really accommodating for those who have disabilities.
And can you explain disability services a little bit?
Disability services is where you go there and you register, and based on your disability, they give you there's tons of different services, like extra testing time, and if you need a note taker, you can get a note taker.
Okay.
And you can also, there's a testing center in there, so you can also take your tests in a secluded, quiet area. And if you are also unable to get around campus easily, you can get a little shuttle service to your class.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Have you noticed any physical campus features that may discourage those with a disability to attend this university? For example, a building without ramps, or a drinking fountain with only accessible on the right-hand side, or anything like that. Have you noticed anything?
I think a lot of buildings around campus have ramps going up to the doors. At least, what was that? Anyway, a lot of buildings like that have ramps up to the doors, and I think we have 2 different, water fountains, one that's higher and one that's lower, that's easier for people with wheelchairs to get to the drinking fountain if they need. So I think that OSU has accommodated pretty well for people with disabilities. I mean, that's only the buildings that I've been in. I haven't been in every building here on campus, but for the buildings that I regularly visit, they're pretty accommodating for those.
Can you tell me exactly, or can you tell me a few of those buildings?
What's that, engineering?
Hitchcock?
Hitchcock, yeah. Hitchcock, and I mean, there's also, the RPAC has an elevator.
Okay.
So that helps people get up and down the floors. So there's I forget other buildings, but
No, yeah, that's perfect.
yeah.
Awesome, thank you very much. And then one of the last questions, in what ways does this university appeal to incoming students with disabilities? For example, programs, accessibility, etc.
I think, they make, they obviously push the disability services, register with disability services. They'll, provide you with transportation to your classes, or, they, I think that's the main appeal is, how great our disability services are. I registered when I was with the Mansfield campus. I really didn't use my services then, but once I got here to the Columbus campus, that's when I started using them a lot. And I kind of had to re-register with had my files transferred over to the Columbus campus. So, I think that process was smooth, and they really have a system put in place there. And they also have, good student workers that work the testing area.
Awesome. And you said you were at the Mansfield campus?
Yeah.
And when you were there, did they have, were their disability services as good as the ones on the Columbus campus?
I would say not particularly. That's something they can improve on, I think. It's a little smaller scale, so I think that's kind of hard to, provide. They also, but they definitely have, not to the extent that Columbus campus has, but they have ways to, provide those services.
Awesome, thank you. And then I just had one more question. When you were going through the application process to Ohio State University, did they send you anything, any pamphlets, any informational booklets that showed pictures of students? Did they show anything with students with disabilities on those pamphlets that you remember?
I don't remember much. They just kind of, once I, got into the university, they showed options of disability services if you needed it. There was not really any discussion beforehand about, disability services.
Okay.
I think, maybe if you specifically asked, one of the college advisors or those people before you, sent in your application,
Yeah.
they'd probably tell you about it, but there was not much in the pamphlets or anything about it. It was more about the academic excellence in the Ohio State University. So,
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for your time. Do you have anything else you would like to add?
No, go Bucks.
Go Bucks. Thank you very much. All right, please state your full name and your title.
Natalie Braun, and I'm a student.
Awesome, thank you, Natalie. So why did you choose the Ohio State University?
I chose Ohio State not with really anything dealing with disability. It was just more so close to where I was. It was in-state tuition. I knew they had a good program for psychology, which is what I wanted to major in. But that was pretty much it. It was my top choice for a lot of financial reasons, really. So.
Awesome, thank you very much. Since you have been a member of this university, have you noticed any part of the university that may discriminate against those with a disability? That can be anything from people to locations to anything on Ohio State's campus that could discriminate against those with a disability.
Yeah, so I think, so I subscribe to something called the social model of disability. So I believe that disability is greatly a social construct. So I think people's attitudes towards disability, I think it's more so maybe, although they don't intend to discriminate, I think a lot of people aren't informed on what exactly a disability is and the diversity within disability. So I think a lot of times, more so people's attitudes towards it and making offhand comments and things like that, judging other people maybe just for like taking an elevator to the second floor or something like that, when they could have a disability, or also any sort of mental disability too, I think is a big one. We have advocacy groups and student disability services for that, but I think professors, I've heard from multiple friends who go through the Office of Disability Services for mental illness, talk about just the struggle of communicating with a professor, because even though, everyone has that statement on their syllabus and, we have all of these resources, it still a lot of times comes down to the specific professor and how they're still choosing to accommodate for a student. So it just can be a little bit more work to get them to help accommodate sometimes. So I think just that extra mile that a student has to go sometimes just to get the services they need can be difficult. But mostly a social construct that I think exists in most places. I wouldn't call it just on Ohio State.
Awesome, thank you very much. The next question is, have you noticed any physical campus features that may discourage those with a disability to attend this university? For example, a building without ramps.
Yeah, so I was on crutches. So this is when I already had my disability studies minor, and I have a long history of being interested in disability studies before Ohio State. But until I actually had to experience physically getting around this campus when you can't, I had a really severe fracture. So I was just, on my crutches for like a couple weeks, and just trying to get to class every day. I had to register with disability services so that I could take the bus to my different classes because they were so far apart, and I would have 10 minutes in between. And the different entrances that I would have to take, I actually had to physically, it's kind of demeaning to have to go into the back of a building and then go through this long hallway and find the elevator and go up, and you don't get to enter with everyone else through these main entrances. A lot of these older buildings, with the big staircases going up and everything
Sure.
that are so pretty. So that's when I actually really noticed it. I had taken notice before, but I didn't feel it until I did that. So I think that kind of sends a message, even though under the ADA, I know they don't have to do anything until they do some sort of construction on the buildings. I think that it's still something that should be addressed.
For sure. Awesome, thank you very much. In what ways does this university appeal to incoming students with disabilities? This could be programs, accessibility. Why does Ohio State stand out?
I don't have a lot of experience being able to compare Ohio State to other universities, but from everything, I'm very familiar with our disability studies program here, mostly through the English department. But what I think, I don't know if it's advertised that well, to be honest. So our Office of Disability Services is great. The people in there are super nice, always really friendly. I know we have the TOPS program, so it's a program for students with intellectual disabilities, post-secondary option for them to still go to Ohio State. So not only do we have that program for students, because not every university has that, we also have then student volunteers like myself who are then able to interact with those students and become friends with them. And then so many different, just like anything else, you can find a club for anything at Ohio State. So there's so many different student clubs that deal with that. But there's not really one comprehensive place to go to see all that. It's something that I've found over time gradually, even with that strong interest coming in. It was kind of, I didn't discover them all at once. It was very kind of gradually realizing all the things that we had.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome, thank you. And then one of the last questions I had was dealing with incoming students. Do you believe information is provided to incoming students with or without a disability readily whenever they apply or whenever they get information from Ohio State?
Yeah, so that's a really great question. I'd be more interested to look and see, because I know younger people now from back home who are looking to apply, and I'd be interested to ask them. I remember when I applied 4 years ago, because I'm graduating now, I don't really remember seeing anything specifically on it, or really anything that stood out to me that's memorable. And I tend to look for things like that and notice them. So if I didn't see it, I'd imagine it wasn't there 4 years ago so much. It's something, again, I think you probably have to seek out. I'm sure the resources are there, maybe, but also depending on the disability and what kind of formats are available. I mean, do they have documents that are going to read something out loud to someone you know, so, yeah, and also like displaying students like on the website with disabilities or something more, I guess more visible disabilities, because obviously disability is not always visible. But just having that even in pamphlets and things like that, like I can't really recall seeing that. So I think it'd be a good addition.
Awesome. Thank you very much, and thank you for your time. Awesome. All right, so please state your full name and title.
I'm Margaret Price, and I am an associate professor in the English department, and I direct the Disability Studies program here at OSU.
Awesome, thank you very much. So why did you choose The Ohio State University?
As a faculty member?
Yeah.
It has one of the best disability studies programs in the world. The program was founded, I think, a couple of decades ago by Brenda Brueggemann and some other faculty that were here at the time. And I know that Brenda had a lot of help from Deborah Modelmog, who was a faculty member in the English department. And they not only formed disability studies, but formed a collective group of minority studies programs that is called the Diversity and Identity Studies Collective. And that all stands for, or the acronym for that is DISCO.
Okay.
So they set that up some time ago, and largely, I think, because of Brenda's extraordinary energy, they built a disability studies minor, a graduate, what's it called, a graduate interdisciplinary specialization, kind of a certificate in disability studies.
Yeah.
They also established a series of speakers, visiting scholars, and Brenda formed connections with other offices at OSU, like the Multiple Perspectives Conference, which is run by the Office of the ADA Coordinator. And she also had strong ties to community organizations that focus on disability, especially deaf organizations. So I already knew about the OSU Disability Studies program as much as 20 years ago, I would say. And it did not ever occur to me that I might be a faculty member here. I actually was recruited for the job after Brenda left, and I was astonished. At the time, I was teaching at a very small liberal arts college that did not have a disability studies program, so this job is almost the opposite of that. And I just feel incredibly lucky to be here.
Awesome, thank you very much. So since you have been a member of this university, have you noticed any part of the university that may discriminate against those with a disability? This could be anything from the words people say to physical features on campus.
I do notice these things all the time, pretty much regardless of where I am. I will say that OSU is better than almost any school I've ever been at in terms of its ability to accommodate both students as well as faculty and staff with disabilities. That's really unusual. It's also really unusual to have such a strong disability studies program, which is also in touch with the ADA coordinator, who is also in close collaboration with disability services.
Okay.
So these things all make OSU unusual and unusually good. However, we have a lot of the sort of typical problems that come along with being really either a big school or a small school will run into this. For example, there will be buildings that were built before the Americans with Disabilities Act was passed. So typically, those buildings don't have ramped entrances. Now, I'm not a huge fan of how OSU handles this. They follow minimal compliance for rectifying that problem, which is they ramp one entrance to the building. For example, in Derby Hall, across from my office, most of the entrances require stairs to get into the building. One entrance is ramped, and sort of question number one is, why can't all the entrances be accessible to everyone? Question number two is, how are you telling people where the ramped entrance is? There is on the doors of Derby Hall a sticker, a blue sticker with the international symbol for disability access, which is that upright white stick figure in the wheelchair. Now, those stickers, as far as I remember, do not have directional arrows on them. So the person walking up to, I should look and make sure, the person walking up to Derby Hall, and this is also true of Denny Hall, actually, the the doors on that side of the building, which is the east side, just have a sticker on the door that's like, stick figure in a wheelchair. So then the person who is approaching the doors is left to wonder, does that mean this door is supposed to be accessible? Does that mean some other part of this building is accessible? Like what is this sign telling me? Now the rule for OSU, which is still not super awesome, is that the little sticker is supposed to have an arrow pointing to the accessible door. But that is a lot for a person to try to figure out if they're approaching a building for the first time, especially if the steps keep you far away from the door. You might not even be able to see that little sticker.
Yeah.
And that's true for Derby Hall. It's also ironically true for the building where Disability Services is housed. They also have the situation with arrows directing you around the corner, and it's really hard to tell where you're supposed to go. So that's just one example. Other examples, there's many, 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 because academic life by design is kind of inaccessible. Like, almost every room you'll go into in academic space has fluorescent lights.
Correct.
Those are not tolerable by a lot of people. Those with migraines, those with seizure disorders, a lot of autistic people can't be around them. A lot of people with cognitive injuries can't be around them. There's large groups of people who are not fans. And yet it's almost a universal choice for lighting academic spaces. Poorly working elevators, really narrow hallways like we have here in Denny Hall, poor air quality, unpredictable heat and air conditioning. The list goes on and on and on. It's really, really hard to design a huge structure like this so that it is accessible.
Sure, for sure. So I guess that kind of answers the next question is, have you noticed any physical campus features that may discourage those with a disability to attend this university, such as the stairs? And so I guess with that question, are there any services that we provide as a university to assist those with those physical campus features?
Yes, there are many, many services. As I said, OSU is actually, for all its flaws, is actually better than most schools I know of. Some really old schools in New England, for example, have whole buildings that have never been made accessible. And the buildings that are older than a certain age can often be exempted from legal guidelines if they can show that the building is a historical landmark. So I visited, where was it? It was Georgetown. And the whole campus is really hilly. The sidewalks are cracked and broken. A lot of buildings you just can't even go in if you're using a wheelchair. And they're just like, well, that's how our campus is. It's legally compliant, so oh well. So OSU is better than most, but and it actually, OSU is all technically accessible. As far as I know, there's no building that doesn't have some mode of entrance, even if it's like in the faculty club, the only way a person using a wheelchair or a walker or a person who couldn't use steps, there's actually a lift outside the building. Which is a little dehumanizing. Yeah, exactly. Like, well, now you're human freight. That's not unusual with historic buildings that they don't want to change the structure of. They'll just stick a lift on the outside of the building. Okay. There are some areas where OSU could really work on being more welcoming. For example, in Boltz Hall, where I've taught disability studies classes and others have as well, there's only one wheelchair accessible restroom, and it's on the 3rd floor. So if a student is using a wheelchair and the professor gives like a 5-minute break during class, that means traveling up from the 2nd to the 3rd floor in an elevator, getting into the restroom, using the restroom, getting out, and coming back down. So there's a lot of ways in which things that, even if they're technically accessible, are made really complicated and difficult. And that's an area that I think OSU could work better on.
For sure. Thank you very much. So, in what ways does this university appeal to incoming students with disabilities? This could be anything from programs, accessibility. What is the presence of information for those students as well?
Students with disabilities?
Yes. So, like if, for instance, in pamphlets or brochures about the university, how is that information readily available to students with disabilities?
I totally should know the answer to this, and I don't. I actually don't know what kind of information incoming undergraduate students get. I do talk pretty closely with my graduate students about what kind of information they get. The answer is not a lot. They are considered students, so they are sort of under the domain of the Office of Disability Services. But the grad students that I know, and actually the undergrads too, who've needed health care, have had to do a lot of detective work to figure out how to access that health care, particularly mental health care, which is made fairly mysterious, in part because disability services is a separate entity from the entity which provides and regulates how you access your health care here at OSU. And very few large bureaucracies are great at delivering health care. And OSU is unfortunately no exception.
Okay.
So, but that's an interesting question about what incoming students get right off the bat. I honestly don't know.
Awesome. So in addition to that, I guess, what other programs other than disability services entices students to come here with disabilities?
Other than disability studies or disability services?
I guess kind of both.
Okay. Possibly our really strong programs in minority studies and feminist studies. We have a great women's and gender and sexuality studies department. We have a really strong comparative studies department. And there's also really excellent collaboration between humanities-based study of health and disability and medical or science-based study of health and disability. There's been some really specific effort on the part of people in both areas to reach kind of toward each other and not have those parts of campus be separated. So one thing I love about OSU is the students I have in Intro to Disability Studies are mostly not humanities majors. They're in occupational therapy, nursing, pre-med, special education, speech and hearing, areas like that.
For sure.
And those are students who actually don't get a lot of chance to take humanities classes once they're finished with first year writing. And I don't usually get a chance to talk to students who are going into the sciences. So that's another big opportunity that OSU offers is that kind of cross-pollination.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for your time. It was very nice to talk with you.
It was great to talk to you too. Thanks for your patience.
No problem.
This last interview by Dr. Price concludes the documentary, and I would like you all to take away some information from the documentary. Daniel talked a lot about the fact that the Mansfield campus of The Ohio State University is much different than the Columbus campus, and I want you to kind of see the differences between those. Natalie talked a lot about the social model of disability as well as physical features in which when she was injured, which physical features were a barrier to her. Dr. Price talked a lot about the programs and the services that this university has for those with a disability, as well as alternative majors and the disability studies minor that can help those students and can help all students see a bigger picture and start to focus on all the disabilities that could be encompassed within this world. And so I hope you enjoyed listening to these 3 interviews and took away some learning experience from the interviews.